TLGY. I'm the CEO at Verde Bioresins. This is Brian Gordon. Brian is the president and COO and the founder of the company. And this is Claire Murphy. She's the vice president at IR Labs, our IR firm who keeps an eye on Brian and I while we're out at these events. So she's probably taking notes on us right now. Anyway, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on polyethylene and who Verde is. And then I'm going to let Brian take over and talk about the SPAC. Okay? So the first slide, really I'm going to summarize this quickly. There's a lot here, but the key points really are a couple of things. One is 400 million tons. Basically, what this refers to is there's about 700 billion pounds of plastic produced globally in the world today. Okay? Of that, less than 9%. Really, in the US, it's probably 6-7% that's actually recycled, and probably 10-12% that gets sent to incineration. And theoretically, the rest of it gets spread across the oceans from third world countries, but more importantly, in the US, gets sent to landfill. And that's a big critical issue for plastics today, because they're not getting recycled, okay? And those products that aren't getting recycled are going to landfill. And those types of polymers, all the thermoplastics that are petroleum-based, last 3,000 years, depending on thickness and so forth. So what we're going to try to address is with Verde's bioresins, okay? Because you're going to see that we really fit the 4 key sustainability areas of bio-based, recyclable, reusable, and biodegradable. We're going to help, hopefully, to address this 50% of plastics or more that's going to landfill today. And you're going to see in here again that less than 2% of plastics of the 700 plus billion pounds today are bioresins, so it's a huge market. Okay? So this is going to really address some of the drivers behind this. You guys have heard this for 3, 4, 5, even close to 10 years. A lot of the big brands, the big brand owners have established their own 2030, 2040, 2050 sustainability goals to become carbon neutral. Everyone has this target of becoming carbon neutral by 2050. And that's only going to happen through everything from methane containment, pentane containment, all the gas emissions, but also plastics, okay? You see a couple of the big names here, but well beyond these Pepsis and the CPGs and Procter & Gamble and Unilever, there's the people like FedEx, Amazon, and everybody has all these big shipping packaging labels and envelopes, which is a huge, huge high visibility application that has taken a lot of heat. Our product's going to help to address that, does help to address that, and it's already being evaluated in some of these applications. Okay, but again, the key point here is less than 2% of bioplastics are actually being utilized in this whole petrochemical-based polyolefin market. Now, a little bit about polyethylene, or I should say Verde Bioresins. We are Verde Bioresins. What we produce is a product line called polyethylene. And what polyethylene is literally a thermoplastic bio-based polymer, virtually identical to high density and low density polyethylene and polypropylene. But the key characteristics of our product that makes it very unique is that we are bio-based. We are produced with ethanol-based renewable feedstocks that come from, an example, sugarcane, where ethanol is fermented literally from sugarcane, or in some cases you can even use cellulosics, but ethanol is taken, turned back into, ethanol is taken and turned into ethane, and then back into ethylene, and that monomer feedstock can go into reactors at the petrochemical companies who typically produce the petrochemical-based polymers, and they make the same thermoplastic resins out of the ethanol-grown sugarcane instead of petroleum-based. Now, what that allows us, our polyethylene, because it is formulated through ethanol, is bio-based from renewable feedstocks. It is completely recyclable and compatible with high-density and low-density polyethylene and polypropylene when it gets sent into the curbside recycling landfill or curbside recycling systems. It is durable and reusable, just like any other polyolefin is, because it's thermally stable. Once it comes out of that reactor as a polyethylene or a polypropylene produced from ethanol, it's the same as the petrochemical base, but again, it is bio-based. There is no other bio-based polymer that can say that. There are bio-based polymers out there like PLA, PHA, and they are bio-based, but from a completely different source. Starch-based from corn, And what you have here is a really interesting process. They have to build reactors that cost typically $500 million and maybe even more to convert, let's say, starch from potatoes or corn into PLA. So it's very capital intensive. The petrochemical companies that have started producing the green feedstocks that we utilize already have reactors in place. Those reactors are agnostic to the feedstocks that are coming from sugarcane, or I should say the ethanol base. Okay, so this absolutely now allows us to be, like I said, hitting those 4 key components of the sustainability and environmental responsibility for bio-based, recyclable, durable and reusable, and if it's sent to landfill, it will biodegrade within typically a 3-year period, depending on its formulation. Another key aspect of our product is, because it is a thermoplastic, it is designed to run on all existing equipment that's in place now, whether you're making an injection molded cup, and Brian may show some parts, thermoform trays, film bags, blow molded containers. So now there's very little CapEx that's needed for a converter, whether it's somebody making consumer product bottles, whether it's someone making a 2-compartment school feeding tray, or someone making a pharmaceutical vitamin bottle. They can literally be producing in a petrochemical-based polyolefin today and convert over to a polyethylene bio-based polymer that's both recyclable and biodegradable. Okay, another key aspect, FDA approved. These products are FDA approved for all food contact. Basically, again, the same as polyethylene. So we have a really, really good story to tell. And another key aspect of the company, when Brian started the company and set it up in Fullerton, California, the first thing that he did when they were figuring out all the feedstocks that are needed to produce this product is not only to secure the equipment required to do it, because our technology is based on some very unique technology for compounding, okay, but also our biodegradation technology, which is proprietary. But he employed a group of PhDs that are polymer chemists, polymer scientists, so they really help to take a look at our formulas to make them as drop-in ready as possible, or like I said earlier, make sure that we can adapt these products to be going into existing equipment. One last thing about our biodegradation technology, and this is very, very important. It is thermally stable, whether it's in the pellet form, because we sell pellets to the companies that melt them down in, like I said, injection mold them into various components or containers. It is thermally stable as a pellet, in the part, on the shelf, throughout the use. It doesn't start biodegrading until it gets into a landfill, when it's in the presence of microorganisms that are found strictly in the landfills, typical of landfills. And they are attracted to the biodegradation technology that we include. They basically, it creates a film on the outside, and they start consuming it. So no matter where this product is standing in your house or in your garage or how it's being used, once it's spec'd and cleared for its use or qualified for the use, it's going to remain stable until it goes until it gets either recycled and goes back into the polyethylene and polypropylene recycle feedstocks chains, or it goes to a landfill. So we help to, again, cover all 4 of those bases. Okay, one last quick slide. I'll turn it over to Brian. This gives you a little idea of how it compares to PLA, PHA, and green PE. So these are other bio-based polymers, and I want to put this out there too. We are not saying that there's something wrong with those products. Those products just have limited, let's say, use and limited performance. They are bio-based from, let's say, corn feedstocks, but they are limited on their shelf life. They are not necessarily thermally stable. You can see them at times begin to break down at excessive heat inventory warehousing. They also have lack of thermal stability in processing, very narrow processing window. And more importantly, when you even attempt to recycle them within a plant, where trim scrap and broken products try to get recycled, they do not work well because they begin to break down very quickly. They're designed to be for single use. So there will be some uses for these, and you see them today even in some cutlery and some straws and some simple applications. Our product, like I said, is designed not only to go into those if you need additional durability, but also it allows you to get into housewares and automotive and a lot of other applications that are not going to see any type of breakdown until, again, they are broken down and put into landfill or put into recycling. Okay.
Before we hit the transaction, could you just touch on Vinmar and Braskem and your agreements there?
Yep, Brian can touch on that, but two key things. Our ability to be successful through the value chain is working with key value partners because we don't react to polymer. So Braskem and a few other, let's say, petrochemical polymer companies, they produce billions of pounds of petroleum-based polymers, polyethylene, polypropylene, you name it. They have already decided that they're going to get into recycled products, petrochemical-based products, and green. Their products, like green PE, are bio-based, but still have to be recycled and do not biodegrade. So they actually see us as a channel partner to be able to extend that product and take it into both recycling as well as biodegradation. So that's the back end of the supply, right? The front end is Vinmar working through a distribution channel such as Vinmar, one of the top polymer distributors in North America, actually globally. They put more feet on the ground for us to get to some of these smaller molders and converters who really have some of these niche applications that can convert quickly and hopefully get that 2% number up to 3, 4, 5, and help to give us traction. So we're working on both ends of the supply chain, both to make sure that we have feedstocks to supply our growth. We're taking care of the capacity and growth through SPAC, okay? And then on top of that, expanding our distribution through not only direct sales, but through Vinmar. Okay?
They also have relationships with some of the larger plastics users, the converters, and the national brands. Directly, we have relationships with about 30 large companies, and indirectly through Vinmar, we have relationships with about 40 additional companies today that we're working with, and our sales pipeline, as a result of that, probability adjusted, is in excess of $250 million today. Let's see.
Funny point
Let me
on
see
that.
what we can do, because we're at 15 minutes right now.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. What time flies?
So just
He said we got some extra minutes the last
perfect, but just briefly in terms of the transaction,
I'll talk for an hour.
we're hoping to close our SPAC transaction in February. We'll be submitting our second round of comments from the SEC, responding to them this month. Overall, we're looking at about a $360 million pre-money valuation for Verde, and the transaction structure which TLGY put together, and why we decided to go with them, is because they put in place a large bucket of warrants pre-IPO, so it's non-dilutive, that allows companies that invest in the SPAC directly, which is currently at 65 million, to substantially reduce their overall cost per share. So gives them better upside, gives them a substantially reduced downside as well. So investment highlights, which Joe spoke about most of them. $600 billion overall plastics market. We focus on $300 billion of that, representing polyethylene and polypropylene. Strong customer interest in terms of our $250 million sales pipeline, and it's growing weekly. We have what we view as our first mover advantage in this industry, and it's taken us about 3 years to get to the point where we can achieve drop-in ready solutions for converters that currently use traditional plastics. We have strong relationships with companies like Braskem. Joe spent his last 10 years of his career as head of business development over at Braskem, and through relationships that we've developed with Vinmar and some other companies that we'll be announcing in the near future. Strong economics, and this is where the key is for us. So if we'll take a look at a second about year 2 economics, and that for us, that's 60 to 80 million in gross revenue, roughly a $45 million gross margin, and then a 15 to 20% EBITDA margin. And we expect, as we continue to develop our products at scale, we'll both reduce our price and increase our margins. We're looking to go down to about $1.50 a pound, which is lower than anything in the bio-based, biodegradable market today. And then finally, you know, our management team has probably over 120 years
Yeah.
of experience in the plastics industry. Most of it's focused on two individuals, Joe and Gary Metzger, who's got almost
You know, in
45
terms
years
of the
of knowledge.
transactions, it can be pretty difficult, you know, someone to kind of understand it. You've got that whole upside, but then you've got downside protection and the way it's structured. Maybe it's just easiest to kind of cover just kind of the transaction structure in terms of sponsor versus the TLGY, public shareholders, you know, versus, you know, Verde.
So
He's
in
the
terms
expert.
of Verde, we're
And I'll talk too much on it, so.
so in terms of Verde, we're getting roughly 36.5 million shares at $10 a share.
Okay.
And that's our pre-money valuation. In terms of the SPAC itself, today there are roughly $65 million in the SPAC, which represents somewhere around 6.5 million shares. We expect at close for that to be probably somewhere around half of that. The SPAC started at 240 million. And so that 30 million or so, 3 million shares or so, there'll be about 1.2 million shares worth of convertible warrants available to people that invested in that SPAC. So that'll reduce the cost or give them additional upside as well. So when you take a look at our products right now, we're working with about 30 customers directly, including customers in the confectionery and food spaces, leading customers in those spaces, in the cosmetics area, in electronics and semiconductors, and in consumer products. We're also working with bottlers, etc. But if you take a look, we've made things like we make this. This is all that we make. It's a resin. It's a resin to replace traditional plastics. And people like the Philadelphia Eagles have made about 250,000 bags so far for merchandising purposes with our polyethylene resin. We're working with some of the largest thermoforming and extrusion houses in the industry to make things like these thermoform containers, and we're working with their customers on production. Here, this protein powder jar, polyethylene again. So we're looking at about 1 to 3 years of landfill biodegradation time if it's not recycled. And we can achieve things like this tube with this living hinge, which is not something that you traditionally find in a bio-based, biodegradable product. That's for confectionery companies that we're working with. So partners, like we talked about Vinmar and how companies like that have 50 salesmen and 50 support people within North America are really enabling us to get into markets that we otherwise couldn't with a very small sales force. So here's the year 2 numbers. You can see the 60 to 80 million. You can see the roughly 45% gross margin and then 15 to 20% EBITDA. We do have revenue. Currently, it's small. Our capacity in terms of production capacity today is 16 million pounds a year. By January, it'll be about 25 million pounds a year. And this $55 million that we're looking for net will get us to the high hundreds of millions of pounds a year in our next facility in the Midwest, whereas other bio-based biodegradable polymer producers are looking at 500 million to $1 billion just to find out if they'd be capable of scaling. So here's the information on the SPAC in terms of pricing, etc., based on implied redemptions. This gives you kind of a sense of where TLGY thinks that it will be. And that 90%, I believe, is based on the 240 million original value of the SPAC before they reduced it twice. And there's your upside potential as well. Here's the management team. So I secured funding and a great management team led by Joe Paolucci and Gary Metzger. Our head of development, Chris Rankin, he is a PhD polymer chemist with 2 degrees. And prior to bringing him over to Verde, he was a rocket polymer scientist over at Northrop Grumman. And we have several PhDs in that department. Mechanical and physical engineers, Yvonne Soulier, she is a mechanical engineer with tons of experience at, I believe it's HTC, one of the large cosmetics firms. Terry Ritten, and then from the SPAC side, we've got Jin Good Kim. So ultimately, when you look at us, we're bio-based, we're curbside recyclable, we're landfill biodegradable, and then the focus for me is on drop-in ready, which really very few, if any, other bio-based biodegradable companies can claim. We're economically feasible in terms of being at the lowest end of the range for bio-based biodegradable products. And we're highly scalable because we make this pellet and it can have up to 12 different ingredients in it, but we take commercially available ingredients to achieve our single-use pellet, rather than developing a polymer that costs hundreds of millions to billions of dollars to develop. We then take it and we put them together, assemble them in a very specific way based on our R&D team, and then we extrude them. We buy off-the-shelf style extruders, and then we manipulate them for about 3 months to be able to achieve what we're looking to do. And that's enabled us to make all these products on a drop-in basis. I would think by the end of the year, maybe January, we'll have an extrusion coating on paper for things like coffee cups, for candy wrappers, and just for general single-use products. We've been working on something for third world countries for single-use detergents, etc., that we think will be helpful, because ultimately right now, even your coffee cup, it's not landfill biodegradable because it has a polymer coating on the inside.
People don't realize how many paper products you have either have a chemical sizing, chemical coating, or a actual polyolefin fossil-based coating on it that you may not see it, but it's the reason why it's waterproof. Or let's put it this way, it doesn't show leaching or bleed through. And it's, unfortunately, it's perception-wise, it looks more environmentally friendly because it's paper, but it's all, unfortunately, catching up. And this is some of the things that we're trying to position ourselves for, is that a lot of these alternative packages that replace plastic products that have been banned are actually worse for the environment. But we get it. It's perception around paper and some of these other sizing agents that are being used. But little by little, they're starting to realize that, and even in some of these larger cities are saying, okay, we can use polymers if they're bio-based but reusable. Because there's a lot of bio-based stuff that isn't reusable, like we're saying with PLA and so forth. This is, but it also can be recycled. And if the curbside, let's say recycling companies that are picking up your curbside trash are not pulling everything out, and they don't, you can look at your municipal sites and see how little sometimes they take out. But if it's sent to landfill, our products will biodegrade. And this is not a slam on PLA, it's just something that's unknown. Compostable products, if they are not sent to an industrial compost site, will not break down. If they go to a landfill, they will not biodegrade.
A lot of them end up in the ocean and in the water. So with these biodegrade in the.
Yeah, the microorganisms that are typically present in the landfill.
With more than 6,000 small and micro-cap companies listed, if you're looking for the next Apple, then ChannelCheck truly is your tree. It's an investor community where you can access independent Wall Street research, advanced market data, balanced news, corporate videos, and podcasts. You can even register to attend in-person Meet the Management Series lunches, and to be part of the preeminent annual Small and Micro-Cap Investor Conference, NobleCon. And here's the best news. Since ChannelCheck is sponsored by the featured companies, premium membership requires no investment. It's absolutely free. So check it out. Log in today. Find out why ChannelCheck is North America's leading source of research on the companies that just may change the world.